If I map my neighborhood and contribute it to OpenStreetMap, and you map your neighborhood and contribute it to OpenStreetMap, with enough people mapping their neighborhoods, eventually we have a map of the whole world. That's the quick part of the presentation, and now we can look at it in a little more detail. This might be the most famous map in the world, the London subway. It's the tube map. If we're to look at it by the geographic placement, it looks more like this. This was a pretty important map at the time. This is in 1843. We didn't know where cholera came from. Maybe evil spirits, who can tell, right? It's 1843. And Dr. Snow plotted the locations of the sick people. And so those are the black dots that we see clustered kind of towards the center of the map. They were all gathered around Broad Street Pump, where people were all getting their water. What do we use maps for? We use maps to record really big transactions, like the Louisiana Purchase. We also use maps when we're talking about smaller purchases and smaller transactions. Use maps more than just for navigation. OpenStreetMap was created to collect geographic data and share it with other people. Traditionally, geographic data has been hard to get, expensive to create, and very expensive to get from the people who collected it. OpenStreetMap changes that. Under the old model, very often there were real restrictions on how you were allowed to use it. You certainly weren't allowed to pass it along to other people, except under very limited circumstances. OpenStreetMap is primarily a data project, also primarily run on open source software. So it's an open source software project, but the open source software tools that we use in OpenStreetMap are largely just to make the data work better and to make the data collection easy. As Wikipedia is both a software project that lets you build your own wiki, it's also a collection of articles which are equivalent to the data in OpenStreetMap. So Wikimedia has software and data. OpenStreetMap has software and data. We all are familiar with the 4 freedoms of free software. Freedom for power plants, freedom to use in any endeavor, the freedom to examine and improve, and the freedom to pass it along. Those are all tenets that we take very seriously in OpenStreetMap. The current OpenStreetMap data license is the Creative Commons Share-alike license. Since electing to use that license when the project started, we've been advised that the Creative Commons licenses are not for data. We are transitioning to the Open Database license, a license that our community helped to create with the Open Knowledge Foundation. Lawyers familiar with international property law and intellectual property law have helped to draft the Open Database license. We're in the process of transitioning to that now. So if you're using OpenStreetMap data and you care about the license implications, and you should be aware of that change that is coming up sometime soonish. There's a collection of satellites orbiting the Earth, all saying the electronic equivalent of, hey, here I am. Your handheld receiver somewhere on the surface of the Earth receives those signals from several satellites and then takes an estimate of where you are. Standard handheld GPS devices, they'll generally tell you where you are right now. You can also configure them to keep track of where you've been, save a sort of a breadcrumb trail of where you've been over time. This is what that breadcrumb trail might look like after doing a survey in a neighborhood that isn't on OpenStreetMap yet. This is created by driving around a neighborhood near where I live. Each spot there represents my position at one particular second. Before one gets too excited about the data that a GPS device can create, this is also from a GPS device, the same one in fact, recorded over a couple of different minutes in the same location, so it wasn't moving at all. So you can also be tricked by your GPS device if you expect it to be exactly right all the time. It's really not made for very, very fine measurements. They're no good under a couple of meters. And in fact, the variation we see here is apparently my deck is moving 40 or 50 meters, which I didn't know. There should be some way to monetize that. This is what you get with many track files. These track files were collected by a courier company over a period of a couple of days in London, England. If you're familiar with London at all, you can see a couple of the parks and you can see the Thames River. So it's almost as good as a map. We try and do a little better than that though. We start by surveying an area, take notes of the important things that we want on the map. While the name is OpenStreetMap, people care very little about the street. Really, the street is just a tool to get to something you care about. So it's not about the road in front of Grandma's house, it's about getting to Grandma's house. Roads are just a tool to get us there. So we want to take notes of the things that are important to put on the map: schools and post offices and places of business, parks, recreation trails. Those are all things that belong in OpenStreetMap and that we can happily put them in there so that other people can become aware of them. It sounds like doing a formal survey and writing down all of this metadata sounds like a lot of work, when it might just be simpler to copy from another map. Well, a couple of problems there. First, copyright. Other maps are copyright. We don't have permission to take data from other maps. We don't do that in OpenStreetMap. We don't check other online maps for road names. We go out and find them ourselves. There are debates by those learned in law that facts aren't copyrightable, and so we should be allowed to take information from other maps. That doesn't stand up when you consider two things: international law, that's not allowed in all jurisdictions, and OpenStreetMap is an international project, and we aim to be clear on copyright issues in all jurisdictions. And the other problem is that while individual facts may not be protected in all jurisdictions, collections of facts are. And so if everybody in this room were to take just one fact from a map and put it into OpenStreetMap, that would be a collected fact and a systematic approach to taking data from one database and putting it into ours. And that's certainly not allowed either. So we stay away from even taking one item from copyright maps. Here's the other reason. Cartographers, this is not their first rodeo. Cartographers have been putting a lot of time and money in, investing their expertise into making really good maps for a very long time. And people have been ripping them off for a very long time. So it's practically cartographic tradition to put stuff on the map that doesn't exist. They're called trap streets, and sometimes they take the form of imaginary churches, swamps that don't exist, bridges that are completely fictional. And that's what Lie Close is here. If you go to this place in Bristol and look for Lie Close, you'll find a block of flats. There is no such dead-end street there. Lie Close is famous because it was quoted in a legal case in the UK to demonstrate that a mapmaker had stolen map information from another mapmaker. They lost their case, so that's the other reason why we don't take stuff from other people's maps. We've gone on a little survey and collected our GPS tracks. Perhaps it's the roads, perhaps it's the recreational trail while we're off on a bike ride with our family. And then we can take the metadata that we've collected and put that into OpenStreetMap. So the GPS track file that we save with all of its inherent flaws, we don't actually make the data from that, but we do trace the metadata over top of it. So we do use our wetware to eliminate the flaws that we see in the GPS tracks. For example, if you stop your vehicle at a traffic signal, you'll see that you move around. Even though you know you're stopped, the track file indicates that you were moving all around because of the inaccuracies that are inherent in GPS. Once we've added this information to OpenStreetMap through one of the editors, we upload it, and in a few minutes you'll see that it gets rendered into a proper map. A couple of years ago, you had to wait for the next day for your changes to show up on the map in the rendering. Now it can show up as soon as within a few seconds, which is pretty cool if you like instant gratification. Won't it take forever to make a map of the world like that? This is what Toronto looked like in September of 2006 on OpenStreetMap. I started mapping a couple of neighborhoods in and around Toronto because I've always loved maps, and I've been a real fan of open source and free software for a number of years. And this is how the map of Toronto got built up. We're at April 2007 right now. We had a mapping party in downtown Toronto. I have a special magic to be able to pick the worst weather day of the year for mapping parties, but we still had a good group, and we collected that little knot of space in the bottom left there. And then after the snow melted again, other people started mapping Toronto, and I lost track of who was doing what. Over the course of the next 18 months or so, the map of Toronto really filled in. This is individual mappers mapping the stuff they find interesting. Somebody mapped Scarborough. Somebody had to, you know. Other people were mapping downtown. Other people were mapping bicycle routes. Other people stayed more on the highways. But over the course of about 2 years, we did a really good map of Toronto. And now if you look at the map of Toronto, it's been pretty stable and pretty complete since about the end of 2009. And it just gets better. People keep adding single-family businesses that would never show up on a commercial map. They show up in OpenStreetMap because somebody cares about them and puts them into OpenStreetMap. OpenStreetMap has had steady and exponential growth since it started. Doubles in size just about every 6 months. This is an older graph. The shape of the graph now looks pretty much the same because it just keeps doubling every 6 months. Just about every measure we have in OpenStreetMap follows the same exponential growth. The number of data points contributed, the number of users contributing on an overall basis, the number of users contributing in a given month. It's pretty cool to see it growing so steadily and so dramatically. If you were to look into the database in OpenStreetMap, this is the kind of stuff you'd see. Parking areas, for sure. Residential roads, for sure. Those are the types of things that you might expect, but also things that you might not expect. kindergartens, public bathrooms, because there's so much interest in hiking and cycling. We like to keep it to things that are observable and confirmable, relatively permanent. So a parking spot, yes, absolutely. Whether a car is in the parking spot or not so good for OpenStreetMap. And stuff that is generally bigger than a breadbox. Verifiability, permanency, and we'll call it significance. And so eventually, with a community of contributors, you get a map, not just a map of Berlin, but also a map of the Berlin Zoo. And of course, it includes the penguin enclosure. The German OpenStreetMap community is enormous. It's the largest single country community in OpenStreetMap. The German mailing list actually gets more traffic than the English mailing list. So they've also mapped amusement parks. This one shows a couple of chairlifts that feed the slide rides at Fort Fun. It's a map of Rotterdam, but not just a map of Rotterdam, a map that shows all of the cycle trails, and one that you can also load onto your GPS device. So not only can you use your GPS device to collect data for OpenStreetMap, you can put OpenStreetMap data onto your GPS. OpenStreetMap is not just a map of Copenhagen. It's a map of Copenhagen that you can then print and resell, because the data is licensed under Creative Commons license. As long as you give credit, share any changes that you've made, you can sell this map. Now, in fact, these folks don't. They paid the money to print this map, but it's designed for young travelers. So young tourists in Copenhagen can get this really great OpenStreetMap-based map. University of Maryland, some of the students there have made it their business to map all of the footpaths on the campus at the University of Maryland. I understand they were doing it for some credit, so it may not be entirely on the side of the angels here, but it's pretty cool that they were making a map of all of the footpaths on their campus. Well, they also did a tool that could use it for navigation. So they use OpenStreetMap for navigation on their campus, and you can even choose to omit paths that have stairs on them, or you can omit paths that have sloped curbs or have steep inclines. So if you're trying to get around campus on your Segway, you know which way you want to. Okay, maybe there's some application that doesn't involve Segways, I don't know. We get maps of places we expect to have maps of, places like New York City, San Francisco, but also maps that you might not consider for tourist destinations or what have you, like Cyprus. A crowdsourced project like Wikipedia, like OpenStreetMap, there are sometimes people who have competing ideals or competing motivations. Cyprus has the distinction of being the location of the first edit war in OpenStreetMap. A person whose family raised him in Cyprus and then moved away noted that in OpenStreetMap, his town has a different name than he remembers when he was there. And so he changed it back. And there's another OpenStreetMap contributor who still lives there. And when he sees the name has changed, he changes it back to the name that's on the sign when he comes home at work every day. So they have a fundamental disagreement about whether this place should be called one name or another name. This is not a fundamental problem with OpenStreetMap, because you can put in a Turkish Cypriot name and you can put in a Greek Cypriot name and have them name-spaced, and that's fine. But they both want to be default. Okay, that's the problem. What we like to have is things that are verifiable and observable. The OpenStreetMap general rule is what's on the sign wins. But these folks didn't like that. One person was changing it every time you noticed that it was changed, and the other person was using a shell script. It's a fundamental problem, not with OpenStreetMap, but with human nature. And if you can suggest a way to fix this disagreement that the UN hasn't been able to sort out in over 40 years, let us know, because we'd love to be able to fix this at OpenStreetMap and by extension at Wikipedia as well. There are also excellent maps in OpenStreetMap of other places that you might not consider walking around the streets with a GPS device. Baghdad was mapped from publicly available aerial imagery. A couple of mappers in northern England took an interest in mapping Baghdad, and so from the aerial imagery, they added the outlines of the streets. Now, of course, they couldn't see the names of the streets. Some mappers from Baghdad have contributed. And it's interesting because in Baghdad, there's a history of name changes. So they're putting in the historic names of these streets as well. So they're pre-Saddam names, they're the Saddam names, and now they're the post-Saddam names. And so they're putting them all in as name-spaced in that way, and as well there's the English transliterations as well as the Arabic names. And so on the map here, we can see both Latin transliteration as well as an Arabic name, and OpenStreetMap does support all of that. If you want to make a map of Baghdad just with the Latin translations, you can do that. If you want it to default to the Arabic names, you can do that as well. Or if you want a historic map, you can say, I want the Saddam era or the pre-Saddam era, and you can render that map as well, because all of that information is being captured in OpenStreetMap. Kinshasa might be one of the most dangerous places on the world right now. OpenStreetMap has a good map of Kinshasa. Gaza City, the Gaza Strip, is much improved than the screenshot that I took from last year. All of that's cool. Don't we see some of those things in some of the other web mapping applications that you may have seen? Okay, we know the names. They're some pretty cool people. They do some good stuff, but they do have their drawbacks. And the biggest drawback is that OpenStreetMap allows you to have the data if you care about the data. These other applications only let you see a picture of the data, which is only one way of looking at the data, and they give you less flexibility about dealing with the actual underlying data. Another online map might have a location of Wi-Fi locations, and it might have a map of pubs. But if you only care about pubs that have Wi-Fi, with OpenStreetMap you can create your own pub with Wi-Fi icon and plot those on the map. Maybe if you're not quite so serious about how you use your maps, you might want a routing application. The University of Bonn created OpenRoute Service, which starts with an OpenStreetMap Slippy map that you might recognize here, and they allow you to choose a starting and finishing location, and they'll provide you with a recommended route. All of that's pretty cool, but they went a step further. They got online information about traffic and construction from a local traffic service, so they can get that information about what routes are congested and maybe what routes are closed. Instead of suggesting that route that goes through the bad area, they can make new calculations and provide a new route suggestion to you. You can only do it when you have the underlying data. It's really hard to extract that information from just a bunch of pixels. One of the first and still most successful specialty maps using OpenStreetMap is the OpenCycle map. Cyclists care about where there are hills a little bit more than people in cars might care about them. Sometimes a cyclist is looking for a really challenging hill climb. Other times they just want to get the groceries home without getting too sweaty. So the cycle map emphasizes posted cycle routes and roads with cycle lanes on them, which is, again, real benefit to cyclists. And it also shows these elevation contours and hill shading. The cycle map was recognized by the British Cartographic Society with a commendation at their convention at the end of 2008, which is pretty cool for a little community-based map. OpenPistMap shows ski pists or ski trails. This is an area in the Alps, I think the French Alps perhaps. The color-coded trails show the difficulty of the ski trail. The dotted lines show the ski lifts and chairlifts and gondolas, that sort of thing. Again, if you care about specific information, you can render it with OpenStreetMap in a way that makes sense to you. Ride the City provides cycle routing in New York City, and it will even provide you with 3 different levels of recommendation: the safest route, a relatively safe route, and the most direct route. Depending on, is it a separate bike lane that is away from the street? Is it a bike lane that's on the street, or are you just on your own on the street?
They do Toronto now.
They do Toronto now as well? Ride the City? I'm going to change this slide. This is a map of Slovakia. It sort of shows up on the screen there. You can see that it's kind of darker green inside the borders of Slovakia there. They've applied a different map style to Slovakia than the base map around the rest of the surrounding areas there. If you have a particular rendering style that you'd like to see, that your map consumers are expecting to see, you can do that by using the OpenStreetMap toolset.
Can you remove data, like evolving data over time?
If the roads near your house change, we want you to update that in OpenStreetMap. Part of taking an interest in OpenStreetMap is curating when shops change. I mean, a lot of stores went out of business in the last couple of years, and so I've been changing them from whatever the point of interest was previously to vacant. And as the economy picks up, restaurants are opening again, and so it's kind of nice to be able to put a new restaurant on the map right away the day they open so that people can find them. Patch is a community website. This is right now for the Larchmont Mamaroneck patch. They show items of interest on top of OpenStreetMap as a base map. So they've made a simplified rendering of OpenStreetMap, which is, you see the green roads underneath. They've provided additional information that relates to their neighborhood in the little blue balloons. And so you can click over those and get additional information about local events that are going on. This is the map of Earl Street in Toronto on Google as of February last year. That's the truth of it. They traffic calmed that intersection a couple of years ago, and there are a bunch of planters in the way, so you can't drive through there anymore. Some companies will happily try and route you through there with a car. You won't be too happy about it. Other maps don't capture new neighborhoods very quickly. On the right, we see Skipton Crescent and the neighborhood in Cambridge. They're on OpenStreetMap. They still weren't shown on Yahoo as of 2009. Here's Reykjavik. Yahoo kind of showed a couple of roads. Google didn't show Reykjavik at that zoom level at all. That's what it looked like on OpenStreetMap all at the same time. This was a screenshot taken a couple of years ago. All of this data was contributed by one or two interested contributors in and from Reykjavik. So just a couple of people can really provide a map to people who don't have them available. You might say, yeah, Reykjavik, Iceland, come on, big deal, 300,000 people live in Iceland. It's just a matter, it doesn't make commercial sense to provide a map for a place that has so few people. Now, Mumbai has more than 300,000 people. And this is the map of Mumbai on Yahoo as of 2008, and compared to OpenStreetMap on the right in 2008. Now, since that time, to be fair, Yahoo and Google have almost caught up to OpenStreetMap, and so I'd like to congratulate them on improving their data over the last couple of years, but so have we. And then the big advantage of the generous license that we have with OpenStreetMap that lets you use OpenStreetMap under Creative Commons license, and then eventually under the Open Database license, which will provide more clarity to you right in the basic license about what's permitted. This is actually etched into copper, and it's called a haptic rendering. It's a map for the blind. Blind people can feel this map and guide themselves around. I think this is a campus in Germany. Again, some of the really innovative German contributors to OpenStreetMap are concerned with accessibility and providing maps. And of course, because it's built on a stack of open source software, you can build your own OpenStreetMap servers to do these same sorts of interesting custom renders that you've seen in the examples, the few examples that I showed you in the previous slides. This is what the software stack looks like for OpenStreetMap. And a lot of these are OR operations. You don't have to use all of the boxes. But what it comes down to is you can download the data from OpenStreetMap every week in what's called a planet file, so a dump of the database of OpenStreetMap every week. But you can also, if it's important to you, configure your server to keep updated by OpenStreetMap every minute. Your database kept up to date with OpenStreetMap on a minute-by-minute basis. There ends up being about a 20-minute lag as that information is packaged up, the change sets are packaged up, put onto a mirror for you so you can get them. But again, you can update minute to minute just like OpenStreetMap does, and then build your custom render based on the OpenStreetMap data.
Let's say that I wanted to replace the Garmin database on my Garmin GPS.
Yes, sir.
OpenStreetMap stuff. How would I do that?
You would go
and
to,
would that be a good idea?
You would go to my website, and you would find detailed instructions there. Thank you very much for asking. The check is in the mail. It's actually quite easy. There are a number of ways to do it. If you go to the OpenStreetMap wiki, so I don't pimp my own website, and it's my last name, weait.com. And I have a challenging ISP, so my site isn't always up, so I apologize for that. But the process is download a map area that you care about from one of the OpenStreetMap Garmin map service providers and load that onto your GPS, either using a USB cable or using if you happen to use a proprietary operating system, Garmin also provides software that will load new maps onto their device.
Or just put it on an SD card.
Or an SD card, that works great too. We tend to go with Garmin's because enough of the proprietary Garmin map format has been reverse engineered that we can put OSM data back onto the Garmin, and that's a real advantage for many of us. But you can also put it onto open devices like OpenMoko and the Nokia devices. I know the TomToms talk about being Linux, but I believe that they still use a proprietary data format for their maps. And I don't know that that's been completely...
However,
They might be free
similar to yours in the sense that
Yeah.
things are updatable.
Yeah.
So unlike Garmin, which pisses me off on a regular basis because you wind up in a place that either doesn't exist or they give you wrong direction.
It's where it used to be, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Where
Yeah.
it used to be, that sort of crap. Or
Mhm.
sometimes in a completely different direction, which has happened more than once. The idea behind TomTom is if it turns out that it's wrong in theory, then you can upload and say this doesn't exist, we're going to change it.
There's a project called OpenTom that is working on the TomTom devices as far as I know. I don't know much more about them than their URL. Yeah.
Can you give a sense of what state the project is in? For instance, are there places in the world?
Depends where you look. If you look in Germany, it's excellent. The map of Germany in OpenStreetMap is far superior than anything that is available on any commercial mapping site, far superior to the German government. That's not true in every town, but it's overwhelmingly true.
Yeah, I've seen like parking lots mapped out just in my neighborhood.
You can just go out and do a little bit of mapping, like 5-10 minutes, and put it into OpenStreetMap and really make a big splash. Because if somebody else in your neighborhood notices, hey, some of these shops are here, I'm going to do the ones on the next block.
So what's the opposite of Germany?
Antarctica. Okay. I know it's kind of picking on, one. There's one cold continent that I'm picking on. Sadly, they fall out of the range that we display on the Mercator projection. They run into the discontinuity when we try and project the map. Antarctica doesn't show up at all. There are some dangerous places that people just don't go and map, and that's not just in the developing world. That's in cities that we all know about that aren't so far from us. I have one last thing that I'd like to show, and that's about the first 20 seconds of this 15-minute presentation at Where 2.0 just a couple of weeks ago. You probably know there was an earthquake in Haiti last month. Just about everything fell down, and people were in really rough shape. Well, what happened is some commercial outfits came together with some non-governmental organizations, with the UN, with rescue groups, to help the people of Haiti who were in such dire straits. And one of the things that happened is that these commercial outfits who do aerial imagery released their aerial imagery so that OpenStreetMap could turn that into a proper base map for Haiti. There wasn't much of a map of Port-au-Prince before the earthquake. Within 10 days, we had a great map that everybody from the American military to the UN to the rescue teams on the ground were using in Port-au-Prince and the surrounding area in Haiti.
What we did in Haiti changed disaster response forever. I don't know if I can overstate that. What we did ended up creating partnerships between the military, between the open source community, between governments, and most importantly, between the affected population, the Haitian people.
People are recognizing that what we were able to do when the corporations decided to release that data to OpenStreetMap so that we could make maps from it. It was helpful. There were also people from groups like Crisis Commons who found thousands of Haitian expats who were not in the affected area but could translate Haitian Creole into the languages that were primarily understood by the rescue team. So they've translated into English, German, Spanish, Portuguese, Brazilian Portuguese. Piped that information from people's SMS messages saying, I'm trapped under a building on such and such a block. And they got rescue people to them, right? So thank you very much. Happy to answer your questions later today and tomorrow.